The alarm never sounded because Jack Lorne didn't need one. His eyes opened at exactly 5:30 a.m., same as every morning for the past 15 years. The bedroom lay dark around him, Myra's breathing steady beside him in the king-sized bed they'd picked out together 3 years ago. Jack slipped from under the covers without disturbing the sheets. His bare feet found the hardwood floor with practiced silence. 15 minutes for a cold shower. 10 minutes to dress. 5 minutes for black coffee. No sugar, no cream. The cold water hit his shoulders like a slap, but Jack didn't flinch. Cold showers had started in basic training, continued through his years in military cyberintelligence, and never stopped. The shock kept his mind sharp. Today would require every edge he could get in his home office. Jack settled behind the triple monitor setup that dominated the mahogany desk. The terminal hummed to life with a series of encrypted handshakes. 3 firewalls. 2-factor authentication. Biometric confirmation. The Department of Defense didn't take chances with their contractors, especially ones who worked on classified autonomous weapons systems. The drone protocol patch had taken him 6 weeks to perfect. Cryptographic security for military drones wasn't just about keeping enemies out, it was about making sure the machines stayed under human control. One line of corrupted code could turn a defensive system into a nightmare. Jack's fingers moved across the keyboard without hesitation. Each keystroke deliberate. Each command tested twice. The patch uploaded through secure channels, confirmed, and logged. Another small piece in America's digital armor, strengthened T6:47 a.m. He initiated the shutdown sequence. The screens went black. The drives encrypted themselves. The firewalls locked down tight. Jack had learned early that gaps killed people. In foster care, it was the gap between what adults promised and what they delivered. Foster parents who swore they wanted to help, then disappeared when the monthly checks stopped coming. Social workers who promised stability, then moved him to another placement without warning. 18 years of broken promises had taught him that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford in the military. It was the gap between what you knew and what you assumed. Assumptions got soldiers killed. Jack had seen it happen in cyberintelligence operations, commanders who assumed their communications were secure, analysts who assumed enemy hackers couldn't break their encryption. The moment you stopped questioning everything was the moment someone found your weakness. In his marriage, it was the gap between what Mira said and what she meant. 7 years of learning to read the subtle tells. The way her voice changed when she was calculating something. How she tilted her head slightly left when she was about to lie. The practiced smile she used when she wanted something. That he poured his second cup of coffee and checked his phone. 3 missed calls from Zainlock. No messages. No voicemails. Just the missed call notifications from 5:23 a.m., 5:31 a.m., and 5:44 a.m. Zain never called this early unless something was wrong. In 15 years of friendship, Zain respected Jack's morning routine. He knew about the cold showers, the precise schedule, the need for uninterrupted focus before the day began. For Zain to break that pattern meant emergency or opportunity. Jack dialed back. The phone rang once before Zain answered. Finally, Zain's voice carried tension that hadn't been there yesterday. "We need to meet. Today." "About what?" "Not over the phone. Denny's on Glintstone. 1 hour." The line went dead before Jack could respond. The backyard looked perfect. Mira had spent 2 days arranging everything for their 7th anniversary party. White string lights wrapped around the oak trees. Tables covered in cream tablecloths. A catered barbecue spread that probably cost more than Jack made in a week. 30 guests filled the space. Co-workers from Myra's marketing firm clustered near the bar setup, already 3 drinks deep and getting louder. Neighbors from her subdivision made polite conversation about property values and homeowners association drama. A few of Jack's old military contacts stood awkwardly by the buffet table, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Everyone holding drinks, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, celebrating 7 years of marriage that had felt more like a business arrangement for the last 2. The Hendersons from next door cornered Jack near the deck railing. Bob Henderson worked in insurance sales and never missed an opportunity to pitch life insurance policies. His wife Linda collected gossip, like some people collected stamps. "Beautiful party," Linda gushed, her third martini making her voice louder than necessary. Mira has such wonderful taste. You're lucky to have her. Lucky, Jack repeated, nursing a beer he hadn't asked for. Social events drained him like nothing else. Too many variables to track. Too many people saying things they didn't mean, asking questions they didn't want answered. Bob leaned closer, smelling like gin and desperation. You know, Jack, at your age, you should really think about increasing your life insurance coverage, especially with Myra's career taking off like it has. I'll think about it, Jack said, the same response he'd given Bob for 3 years running. Don't think too long, Bob pressed. You never know what might happen. Accidents, health problems, career changes. A man in your line of work faces unique risks. The comment struck Jack as oddly specific. Bob Henderson sold homeowners insurance, not life policies for military contractors. How would he know about unique risks in Jack's field? Jack, Zane Locke's voice cut through the chatter. There's the man of the hour. Zane strode over with that confident walk he'd perfected at the military academy. 39 years old, built like he still ran 5 miles every morning, expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. The kind of understated luxury that whispered money instead of shouting it. But something was different tonight. Zane's smile looked forced. His usually perfect posture seemed stiff, and his eyes kept darting toward the house like he was watching for something. Didn't expect to see you here, Jack said. Mira invited me personally. Said it was important that I attend. Zane's smile didn't reach his eyes. We need to catch up soon. There are some business opportunities developing. New contracts coming available. What kind of contracts? Defense work. Cybersecurity. The kind of thing you'd be perfect for. Zane glanced around the party, then lowered his voice. Companies are paying top dollar for people with your specific skill set. We should discuss it this week. Before Jack could respond, Myra's voice rang out over the crowd. Everyone, can I have your attention? The conversations died. 30 faces turned toward the deck where Mira stood holding a champagne flute. She wore the blue dress Jack had bought her for Christmas, the one that made her eyes sparkle. Her dark hair caught the string lights perfectly. 7 years ago, I married the man I thought was my soulmate, Mira began. Her voice carried that practiced confidence she used in client presentations. I thought I knew him completely. Jack felt the first cold touch of warning in his gut. But sometimes the people closest to us are the best at hiding who they really are. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the anniversary toast they'd expected. Mira reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. 3 weeks ago, I found these. She held up the screen. Even from 15 feet away, Jack could see the text message chain. His name at the top. Flirty messages to someone named Jessica. Dinner plans. Hotel receipts. The backyard went silent except for the hum of the neighbor's air conditioning unit. My husband has been cheating on me for months, Mira announced. Her voice cracked perfectly on the last word. With my coworker Jessica, who was supposed to be my friend. Jack stared at the phone screen. The messages looked real. His contact photo, his phone number, conversations he'd never had with a woman he'd never met. Mira, we should talk about this, he started. I'm done talking. Myra's voice rose to just the right pitch. Hurt, but not hysterical. Strong, but vulnerable. I'm done pretending everything's fine while you sneak around behind my back. Carly Dunn stepped forward from the crowd. Myra's childhood friend looked like she'd been crying. Her makeup was smudged, her hands shaking as she held her own drink. I tried to tell her, Carly said to the crowd. I saw them together at Romano's last month. Jack and this Jessica woman. They looked intimate. More lies. Jack had never been to Romano's with anyone except Mira. Zane moved beside Carly, his face grave. I suspected something was off. Jack's been distant lately. Secretive. I thought maybe work stress, but the crowd murmured. 30 people who barely knew Jack, ready to believe the worst. The neighbor from 3 houses down shook his head in disgust. Myra's boss from a marketing firm put a protective arm around her shoulders. Jack took a slow sip of his beer. The bitter taste grounded him while his mind processed the setup unfolding around him. The messages on Myra's phone looked perfect. Too perfect. The timing was surgical. The witnesses were coordinated. "We'll talk in court," Jack said, his voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. No anger, no pleading, no desperate explanations. Just 5 words delivered with the same tone he'd used to order lunch. Myra's perfect victim expression flickered for half a second. In that moment, Jack saw something else underneath. Calculation, satisfaction. The crowd stared at him. They'd expected denials, tears, rage. Instead, they got a man who looked like he was reading the weather forecast. "That's it." Myra's voice pitched higher. "That's all you have to say?" Jack set his beer on the deck railing and walked toward the house. Behind him, the party erupted in whispers and shocked conversations. He heard Carly's voice rise above the rest. "He's not even denying it. Did you see how cold he was?" The sliding door closed behind him with a soft click. Jack's garage workshop occupied half the 2-car space. Workbenches lined 3 walls, covered with electronic components, soldering equipment, and diagnostic tools left over from his military days. The other half held Myra's BMW, which hadn't moved since yesterday. He activated his home security system from the main terminal in the corner. The monitors flickered to life, showing feeds from 8 cameras positioned around the property. Motion sensors, door logs, window alerts. Everything that had happened in this house for the past 6 months, recorded and encrypted. The access logs loaded on the center screen. Jack's thumb drive contained the decryption keys for everything his insurance policy against the kind of setup he'd just witnessed. Every digital footprint in his house for the past 6 months, recorded and encrypted with military-grade security protocols. He scrolled through weeks of data, looking for anomalies. His own patterns were predictable: terminal activation at 5:30 a.m., work sessions ending by 7 p.m., security system armed at 10 p.m. every night. Myra's patterns were different, but consistent: late-night online shopping, morning social media sessions, afternoon calls to her office. Then he found at point 3 weeks ago. 2:47 a.m. Terminal activation in the home office. Jack scrolled through the video feed from that night. The infrared camera showed him passed out in bed after working 18 hours straight on the drone protocol. Deep sleep, the kind that came from mental exhaustion and too much caffeine. And there was Mira creeping in his office at 2:47 a.m. with something small in her hand. A device he didn't recognize. She positioned his sleeping finger against the biometric scanner. The terminal unlocked with a soft chime. For 17 minutes and 34 seconds, she copied files, accessed his communications, and downloaded encrypted military software that she had no legal right to see, no clearance to access, and no legitimate reason to possess. Federal crime number 1. Unauthorized access to classified information. 10 years minimum in federal prison. But she wasn't done. Jack watched the video as Mira inserted a USB device into his terminal and ran what looked like a cloning program. She was copying not just his files, but his entire digital identity. Email accounts, messaging apps, authentication tokens, everything needed to impersonate him online. Federal crime number 2. Identity theft in service of espionage. Another 10 years. Jack pulled up the audio logs from their smart home system. Most people didn't realize that voice-activated devices recorded conversations even in standby mode. The manufacturers claimed it was for improved user experience and faster response times. In reality, it was a surveillance system that most users installed voluntarily. The audio file from 2 weeks ago made his blood turn to ice water. Voices in his kitchen at 11:30 p.m., speaking in hushed tones while Jack worked late in his office. Myra's voice. The timing has to be perfect. If we trigger the mental fitness clause in his DoD contract, they'll revoke his clearance and freeze his pension contributions. Zane's voice. The tech he's working on is worth millions to the right buyers. Drone security protocols, autonomous weapons interfaces, battlefield communication encryption. Our clients would pay 8 figures for access. Carly's voice. I can testify about his behavior. Make it look like he's been deteriorating for months. Paranoid episodes, violent outbursts, threats against co-workers. Myra's voice. The affair story will be the final trigger. Public humiliation, emotional breakdown, complete loss of credibility. No one recovers from being exposed like that in front of their entire social circle. He'll have a complete mental collapse. Zane's voice. And when he does, we'll have everything we need. His reputation destroyed, his clearance revoked, his access to new projects terminated. Perfect cover for the technology transfer. Jack saved the audio file to 3 separate encrypted drives. 3 copies of evidence that would destroy all of them. The DoD contract included a mental fitness clause that could void his security clearance if he showed signs of psychological instability. Paranoia, unpredictable behavior, threats of violence. Without his clearance, Jack would lose his consulting contracts, his pension contributions, and his access to the work he'd spent 15 years building. But Myra's real target wasn't his money. It was his code. Jack pulled up the software manifest from his DoD work. Drone security protocols worth 8 figures to the right buyer. Cryptographic keys that could unlock autonomous weapons systems. Technology that foreign governments would kill for. And Mira had copied all of it 3 weeks ago while he slept. The garage door rumbled open. Myra's BMW pulled into the driveway with aggressive precision. The engine shut off. High heels clicked across concrete. Jack minimized the security feeds and opened a harmless-looking diagnostic program. When Mira walked into the garage, he was running cable diagnostics on a router. "We need to talk," she said. Her makeup was still perfect despite the emotional breakdown she performed 20 minutes ago. The blue dress hung without a wrinkle. Her eyes were dry. "About what?" Jack didn't look up from his screen. "About what happens next. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow." "Good to know." Mira stepped closer to the workbench. "You're not going to fight this, are you? It'll be easier for both of us if you just accept what's happening." Jack's fingers paused on the keyboard. "Accept what exactly?" "That our marriage is over. That you need help. That the best thing for everyone is a clean break." She was reading from a script. Every word calculated to sound reasonable while hiding the threat underneath. "I'll need time to think about it," Jack said. "Don't think too long. My attorney specializes in cases involving military contractors with security clearances. He knows how to handle complicated situations." The threat was clear now. Cooperate or lose everything. Jack saved his work and shut down the terminal. When he turned around, Mira was already walking back to the house. Her phone was pressed to her ear. "It's done," she said into the phone. "He's not going to fight it." Wrong again, Jack thought. But she wouldn't know that until it was too late. The garage fell quiet except for the hum of cooling electronics. Jack opened his secure email and typed a message to the one person he trusted more than anyone. "Harlan need to meet. Urgent. Bringing evidence." The reply came back within 2 minutes. "My office. 1 hour. Bring everything." Jack gathered the encrypted drives and headed for his truck. The next phase required allies, and Harlan Boone was the best ally a man could have when the game turned deadly. The Greene County Family Court building squatted on Boonville Avenue like a concrete monument to human failure. Jack sat in the waiting area outside courtroom 3, watching Mira and her attorney whisper strategy at a table 20 feet away. Richard Steinberg looked exactly like Central Casting would order for a divorce lawyer. Silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of practiced sympathy that came with 30 years of separating people from their assets. He'd probably charged Mira $500 just to walk through the door. "Mr. Lorne." A court clerk appeared beside Jack's chair. "Judge Morrison will see all parties now." Judge Theodore Morrison had been handling family cases in Springfield for 15 years. He looked tired today, like a man who'd seen too many marriages die ugly deaths. His gavel rested beside a stack of files thick enough to choke a horse. "This is a pretrial motion hearing in the matter of Lorne versus Lorne," Judge Morrison announced. "Mr. Steinberg, you requested this hearing. Proceed." Steinberg stood with theatrical gravity. "Your Honor, my client Mira Lorne is seeking immediate protection from her husband, who has exhibited increasingly erratic and dangerous behavior over the past several months." Jack watched Mira dab at her eyes with a tissue. The performance was flawless. "Mr. Lorne has been secretive, paranoid, and emotionally abusive," Steinberg continued. "My client has reason to believe his work in military contracting has affected his psychological state. We're requesting an immediate psychological evaluation and a freeze on all marital assets to prevent him from hiding money or making irrational financial decisions. Judge Morrison looked at Jack. Do you have representation, Mr. Lorne? Not yet, Your Honor. I'm representing myself for now. That's generally not advisable in cases involving significant assets and psychological evaluations. I understand, Your Honor. Steinberg pulled out a manila folder. We have evidence of Mr. Lorne's deteriorating mental state. Text messages showing his infidelity. Witness statements about his increasingly unstable behavior. And financial records showing suspicious transactions that suggest he's already attempting to hide assets. The financial records were another fabrication. Jack kept meticulous books. Every dollar accounted for. Every transaction documented. But he didn't interrupt. My client is afraid, Your Honor, Steinberg said. She's living with a man who has access to classified military technology and appears to be suffering from what we believe is work-related PTSD. She needs protection. Mira took the witness stand with perfect timing. The blue dress was gone, replaced by conservative gray that made her look vulnerable. Her voice shook as she spoke. I've tried to help him, she said, but Jack has become paranoid and controlling. He checks my phone. He questions where I go. Last week, he accused me of stealing files from his computer. True, because she had stolen files from his computer. He's been drinking more, staying up all night, working on projects he won't discuss. When I found the messages to Jessica, he didn't deny it. He just looked at me like, Myra's voice broke, like he was calculating something. Judge Morrison frowned. Mr. Lorne, do you want to respond to these allegations? Jack stood slowly. Your Honor, I won't contest the psychological evaluation. Silence filled the courtroom. Steinberg's pen stopped moving. Myra's perfect victim expression flickered. You won't contest it? Judge Morrison asked. No, Your Honor. I'll submit to any evaluation the court requires. I'll also agree to a temporary freeze on our joint accounts. Steinberg recovered quickly. Your Honor, we also request full disclosure of Mr. Lorne's work files and communications to ensure he hasn't been sharing classified information inappropriately. This was the trap. They wanted access to his military contracts to prove he was mentally unfit, but they just asked for something that would destroy them instead. Mr. Lorne. Judge Morrison waited for his response. Jack smiled for the first time since entering the courtroom. Your Honor, under Missouri discovery law, I request reciprocal disclosure. If Mrs. Lorne wants access to my communications and files, I want the same access to hers. All digital communications, financial records, and device metadata for the past 6 months. Steinberg's face went pale. Your Honor, that's unnecessary. It's reciprocal discovery, Jack said. Standard procedure when one party requests digital disclosure. Judge Morrison nodded. Agreed. Both parties will provide complete digital disclosure within 30 days. Mr. Lorne, you'll undergo psychological evaluation within 2 weeks. Mrs. Lorne, the asset freeze is temporary pending the outcome of this case. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Outside the courthouse, Mira caught up with Jack on the front steps. What are you playing at? She hissed. Following court orders, Jack said. Just like you wanted. You think you're clever, but you have no idea who you're dealing with. Jack stopped walking and turned to face her. For 7 years, he'd seen Mira as his wife. Now he saw her clearly for the first time. The calculation behind her eyes. The practiced way she tilted her head when she lied. The complete absence of any real emotion. You're right, he said. I had no idea who I was dealing with. But I do now. He walked away, leaving her standing on the courthouse steps with her mouth open. Ivy Latham's office occupied the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse downtown. No sign on the door. No company name on the directory. Just Digital Solutions Suite 307 in small black letters. Jack had found Ivy through Harlan's network. Former Air Force Signals officer turned freelance digital forensics analyst. She specialized in cases involving military contractors, government employees, and anyone else who needed problems solved quietly. Your wife is either very stupid or very confident, Ivy said, scrolling through the preliminary analysis on her workstation. Jack sat across from her desk. watching code flow across multiple monitors. Ivy was smaller than he'd expected. Maybe 5'4", with short red hair and the kind of intense focus that came from staring at data streams for 12 hours straight. She cloned your phone using a SIM swap attack, Ivy continued. Probably paid someone $500 to walk into a cell store with fake ID and convince them to transfer your number to a new device. Once she had access to your text messages, she could send whatever she wanted and make it look like it came from your phone. How do we prove that? Cell tower logs. Your real phone pinged towers near your house. At the same time, the fake messages were sent from across town. No one could be in two places at once. Ivy pulled up another screen showing financial records. But the phone cloning is just the beginning. Your wife transferred $180,000 to an LLC registered in Delaware under the name Devin Lake. Jack recognized the name immediately. Devin is Myra's cousin. Works at Zane's company, Blackwater Defense Solutions. They specialize in selling military technology to foreign governments. Perfectly legal, but they need access to current tech to stay competitive. The picture was coming together. Myra steals Jack's classified research. Zane's company packages it for sale to overseas clients. Everyone gets rich except the American taxpayers who funded the original development. There's more, Ivy said. She opened an encrypted folder. I found traces of military-grade decryption software on your wife's laptop. Software that she has no legal right to possess. That's a federal crime. 10 years minimum, if they can prove intent to distribute. Which brings us to the interesting part. Ivy swiveled her chair to face Jack directly. Someone's been watching you for months. Professional surveillance. Your email account has been accessed from IP addresses in 3 different countries. Your home network has been probed by people who know exactly what they're looking for. Foreign intelligence, or contractors working for them. Either way, your wife opened a door that she can't close. Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Harland. Meet me at Ozark Brewing. Back booth. 1 hour. Harlan Boone's office occupied the top floor of a nondescript building on Campbell Avenue. No directory listing. No company sign. Just Suite 1200 in small brass numbers and a receptionist who looked like she'd been personally selected for her ability to forget faces. Jack had known Harlan for 12 years. Ever since their paths crossed on a classified project involving battlefield communication protocols. Harlan had been the senior advisor, Jack the junior contractor. The older man had taken Jack under his wing, teaching him not just about technology, but about the dangerous intersection of military secrets and civilian greed. Ivy's preliminary report makes for interesting reading, Harlan said, sliding a manila folder across his mahogany desk. Your wife is either incredibly stupid or dangerously confident. Jack opened the folder and scanned the technical analysis. Pages of network logs, financial transactions, and digital forensics that painted a picture of professional-level espionage. She cloned your phone using a SIM swap attack, Harlan continued. Not something your average angry spouse knows how to do. Someone taught her, or someone did it for her. Zane has the technical knowledge. Zane has connections with people who have technical knowledge. Big difference. Harlan leaned back in his chair. This operation required planning, resources, and expertise. Your wife didn't wake up one morning and decide to steal military secrets. This has been in development for months. Jack turned the page to find bank records showing the money transfer to Devin Lake's LLC. $180,000. Down payment. The real money comes when they deliver your research to their buyers. Harlan's expression darkened. Blackwater Defense Solutions has been aggressively pursuing contracts with overseas clients. China, Russia, North Korea, anyone with cash and questionable ethics. How do you know about Blackwater's client list? Because I've been watching them for 2 years. They're a legitimate defense contractor on paper, but they operate in gray areas that make me nervous. Selling American military technology to foreign governments isn't illegal if it's properly licensed. But they've been cutting corners on the licensing process. Harlan opened his laptop and pulled up a classified database that Jack wasn't supposed to know existed. 3 months ago, Chinese intelligence officers met with Blackwater representatives in Vancouver. No official record of the meeting, but our sources confirmed they discussed purchasing advanced drone control systems. My drone protocols. Your protocols, plus similar technology from other contractors. They're assembling a complete package control systems, encryption methods, countermeasure protocols. Everything needed to neutralize American drone advantages in a potential conflict. The implications hit Jack like a physical blow. His work wasn't just intellectual property being stolen for profit. It was military intelligence that could get American soldiers killed. What's your recommendation? Jack asked. Scorched earth. You go to the Office of Inspector General tomorrow morning. File a whistleblower complaint under the Protection Act. Don't mention Mira directly in the initial filing. Let the investigators discover her involvement through their own investigation. Focus on Zane and the suspicious technology transfers. Why not mention Mira? Because if you lead with my wife is stealing my secrets, it sounds like a domestic dispute. If you lead with someone is selling classified technology to foreign adversaries, it becomes a national security investigation. Much different level of response. Harlan closed the laptop and fixed Jack with a stare that carried 40 years of defense intelligence experience. The federal government doesn't mess around with technology theft. They have unlimited resources, unlimited patience, and unlimited authority. Once they open an investigation, they find everything. And Mrs. Lorne has made some very poor choices. The consequences for those choices are about to become apparent. Jack's garage had become mission control. 3 monitors displayed different data streams. Encrypted drives organized by priority. Communication logs printed and cross-referenced. Everything Ivy had found. Everything Harlan had confirmed. Everything that would burn Myra's world to the ground. The Office of Inspector General had opened an investigation within 6 hours of Jack's whistleblower filing. Not because they trusted Jack, but because they took technology theft seriously, especially when that technology could kill American soldiers. Jack printed the final summary report and sealed it in a manila envelope. Zane Locke's name appeared 47 times. Devin Lake appeared 12 times. Blackwater Defense Solutions appeared 31 times. Mira Lorne appeared 0 times. The investigators would find her eventually. They'd trace the money transfers, decode the communication logs, and discover that the helpful wife who provided insider access was actually the center of the entire operation. But by then, Jack would be clear of the blast radius. His phone rang. Myra's number. We need to talk, she said without preamble. About what? About ending this cleanly. I spoke with my attorney. We can settle everything out of court if you're reasonable. Reasonable. The same word she'd used a dozen times over the past week. Code for give us what we want, and we won't destroy you completely. What kind of settlement? You keep your pension and clearance. I get the house and half the savings. We both walk away and never speak again. A generous offer for someone who held all the cards. Too generous. I'll think about it, Jack said. Don't think too long. Richard says the judge is sympathetic to my situation. Military contractors with PTSD don't fare well in family court. The line went dead. Jack walked to his computer and opened the family court filing system. One motion to file. One request to expedite. One signature that would end 7 years of marriage and start something much more interesting. Motion to proceed directly to final judgment and asset division. He typed, if Mira wanted to end it, they'd end it on his terms. The motion filed electronically at 11:47 p.m. By morning, it would be on Judge Morrison's desk with a hearing date within the week. Jack encrypted the last of his evidence files and copied them to a secure military-grade drive. Tomorrow, he'd deliver them personally to the federal investigators. By the end of the week, they'd have everything they needed to destroy Zane's operation and send everyone involved to federal prison. Mira thought she was playing chess. But Jack had been playing a different game entirely. He turned off the monitors and locked the garage behind him. Phase 2 was about to begin. The media van from KOLR 10 News sat in the courthouse parking lot like a metallic vulture. Mira had invited them, expecting to watch Jack's public humiliation broadcast across Springfield. Instead, she'd given them front row seats to her own destruction. Judge Morrison's courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Reporters filled the gallery. Myra's supporters clustered behind the plaintiff's table. Jack sat alone at the defendant's table, a single manila folder in front of him. Mira wore her best victim outfit, conservative navy dress. Minimal makeup, trembling hands that shook just enough to suggest emotional trauma without appearing unstable. Steinberg had coached her well. In the matter of Lorne versus Lorne, Judge Morrison announced, "We're here for final judgment and asset division. Mr. Steinberg, present your case." Steinberg stood with the confidence of a man who believed he'd already won. "Your Honor, my client seeks dissolution of marriage based on her husband's infidelity, emotional abuse, and mental instability. She requests $1.2 million in asset distribution, the marital home, half of Mr. Lorne's retirement accounts, and full rights to any current or future patents." The gallery murmured. It was a massive financial request, but Steinberg made it sound reasonable. Mrs. Lorne has endured months of psychological abuse from a man whose work in classified military projects has clearly affected his mental state. She deserves compensation for her suffering and security for her future. Mira took the witness stand with perfect timing. Her voice carried to every corner of the courtroom. "Our marriage became a nightmare," she began. "Jack grew paranoid, controlling, abusive. He monitored my phone calls, questioned my friendships, accused me of stealing from him. When I discovered his affair, I realized the man I married no longer existed." She was good. Every word calculated for maximum impact. Every pause timed to let the emotion sink in. The reporters scribbled notes furiously. "I'm not asking for revenge," Mira continued. "I just want to rebuild my life without fear, without wondering if the man sleeping next to me might snap and hurt me." Carly Dunn testified next, describing Jack's increasingly erratic behavior. Zane Locke followed, expressing concern for his old friend's mental health. Both performances were flawless. "Your Honor," Steinberg concluded, "Mrs. Lorne has proven her case. Her husband is clearly unfit for marriage, and she deserves significant compensation for the trauma she's endured." Judge Morrison looked at Jack. "Mr. Lorne, do you wish to present a defense?" Jack stood slowly and picked up the manila folder. "Your Honor, I have one document to submit to the court." He walked to the judge's bench and handed over the folder. Judge Morrison opened it and read the single page on top. His expression changed immediately. The tired resignation was replaced by sharp attention. His eyes widened as he read. All parties remained seated. Judge Morrison announced, "Bailiff, close the doors." The bailiff moved to the back of the courtroom and locked both entrances. The reporters looked confused. Myra's perfect confidence flickered. Judge Morrison read the document again, then looked at Jack. "Is this authentic?" "Yes, Your Honor." The judge held up the paper so everyone could see the official letterhead. "This is a signed affidavit from the United States Attorney's Office confirming that the defendant, Mira Lorne, is currently under federal investigation for digital theft, conspiracy, and military code exposure under Title 18, Section 793 of the U.S. Code." The courtroom erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Myra's face went white. Steinberg grabbed for the document, but Judge Morrison pulled it back. Furthermore, the judge continued, "This investigation involves national security matters related to the theft and intended distribution of classified military technology." A man in a dark suit entered through a side door. FBI Special Agent Thomas Crawford had been waiting in the judge's chambers for this moment. He nodded to Judge Morrison and walked toward the plaintiff's table. "Mira Lorne," Agent Crawford announced, "you're under arrest for violations of the Espionage Act, conspiracy to commit theft of classified documents, and wire fraud." The courtroom exploded into chaos. Mira stood frozen as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Steinberg protested loudly about improper procedure. The reporters fought to get closer to the action. "Zane Locke," Agent Crawford continued, spotting Jack's former friend in the gallery, "you're also under arrest." Zane tried to run for the back door, but federal agents were already waiting. Two more sets of handcuffs appeared. "Carly Dunn, you're under arrest for providing false testimony in a federal investigation." Carly collapsed in her chair, sobbing hysterically. The careful conspiracy that had taken months to plan fell apart in under 5 minutes. Agent Crawford read the Miranda rights to all three suspects while the courtroom watched in stunned silence. The media had expected a divorce proceeding. Instead, they'd witnessed the arrest of a federal espionage ring. Judge Morrison banged his gavel repeatedly. This court is adjourned pending federal investigation. All divorce proceedings are suspended indefinitely. As the agents led Mira away, she looked back at Jack with pure hatred in her eyes. No more victim performance. No more fake tears. Just the cold calculation he'd finally learned to recognize. Every lie has a cost, Jack said quietly as she passed his table. Yours was underpriced. I just adjusted it. The doors opened and the suspects were led away. In less than an hour, they'd be in federal custody, facing charges that carried decades in prison. Jack gathered his papers and walked out of the courthouse alone. The federal detention center in Kansas City looked like every other concrete box designed to hold people who'd made poor choices. Gray walls, barred windows, and the institutional smell of disinfectant that never quite covered the underlying odors of desperation and regret. Jack signed a visitor log and submitted to the security screening without complaint. Metal detector, bag search, biometric confirmation. 3 months since the arrests, and this was his first visit. The processing took 47 minutes. Jack sat in the waiting area, watching other visitors, mostly women with tired faces and children who didn't understand why Daddy couldn't come home. A few lawyers in expensive suits, making their weekly rounds to clients who could still afford representation. An elderly man who looked like he'd been making these visits for years. Jack Lorne, a guard called from the security door. Visitor for Lorne Mira. The visiting room was exactly what Jack had expected. Institutional furniture bolted to the floor. Cameras in every corner. Guards stationed at strategic points. 20 small tables with phones, separated by reinforced glass that had probably witnessed thousands of tearful conversations between inmates and the people they'd left behind. Mira sat across from him, separated by that reinforced glass. She'd lost 20 pounds since the arrest. Her hair hung limp and unwashed, no longer the carefully styled perfection she'd maintained for 7 years. The orange jumpsuit made her skin look sallow under the harsh fluorescent lights. But her eyes were the same, calculating, always working an angle. Even here, she picked up the phone on her side of the glass. Jack lifted his. "I didn't think you'd come," she said. Her voice carried none of the practiced confidence he remembered. "I almost didn't. The trial starts next month. My attorney says the evidence against me is overwhelming." She laughed bitterly. "He wants $300,000 for my defense. Money I don't have anymore, thanks to the asset forfeiture." Jack said nothing. The federal government had seized everything she owned: bank accounts, investment portfolios, even her jewelry. Standard procedure in espionage cases. Zane's cooperating with the prosecutors, Mira continued. He's testifying against me to reduce his own sentence. 20 years down to 15 if he tells them everything. Devin's doing the same thing. They're all trying to make me the mastermind to save their own skins. Are you the mastermind? Myra's laugh was sharp and hollow. I was the inside source. Zane planned everything else. But I'm the one who had access to your files, so I'm the one facing the worst charges. She pressed her palm against the glass between them. I know you hate me. You have every right to hate me. But we were married for 7 years. That has to count for something. Jack studied her face through the reinforced glass. Even now, even here, she was trying to manipulate him. The victim routine was different than before, less polished, more desperate, but still calculated. The appeal to shared history, the suggestion that their marriage had meant something real to her. The prosecutors offered me a deal, she said when Jack didn't respond. 10 years if I plead guilty and cooperate with their ongoing investigation. 25 to life if I go to trial and lose. What kind of cooperation? Names, financial records, details about other technology thefts that Blackwater might be involved in. Myra's voice dropped to a whisper. There are other contractors, Jack. Other marriages like ours. Other women who married military contractors and gained access to classified information. This was new information. Jack leaned forward slightly. How many others? At least 6 that I know about. Maybe more. Blackwater has been running this operation for 3 years. They recruit women, train them, help them target specific contractors with access to valuable technology. I thought I was special, but I was just another asset. The revelation shouldn't have surprised Jack, but it did. The scope of the conspiracy was larger than anyone had realized. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know that what we had was real, at least at first. I didn't marry you as part of some operation. That came later, after Blackwater approached me. Tears ran down Myra's cheeks. I loved you, Jack. Whatever else I did, that was real. Jack felt nothing looking at her tears. No sympathy, no anger, no residual affection. Just the cold assessment of a security analyst evaluating a threat that had been neutralized. Every lie has a cost, he said into the phone. Yours was underpriced. I just adjusted it. He hung up the phone and walked away, leaving her sitting alone in the orange jumpsuit she'd wear for the next decade. The cabin sat on 40 acres in the Missouri Ozarks, surrounded by oak trees and absolute silence. Jack had bought the property with the settlement money from Myra's forfeited assets, ironic justice that her crimes had funded his escape from the life she tried to destroy. The federal government had seized everything she owned, then returned half to Jack as the victim of her conspiracy. The main house was modest but efficient. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen designed for function rather than entertaining. No wasted space, no unnecessary complications. The kind of place where a man could think clearly without distractions. Lawrence Systems occupied the converted barn behind the main house. Jack had spent 6 months transforming the agricultural building into a state-of-the-art technology center. Server racks lined one wall, humming with the quiet efficiency of military-grade equipment. Workstations for 3 employees, all former military, all personally vetted by Harlan Boone. They specialized in military software integrity and insider threat protection, ironically, developing countermeasures against the exact type of security breach that Mira had exploited. The company's first contract had come from the Department of Defense itself, a request for consultation on protecting classified systems from insider threats. The irony wasn't lost on Jack as personal victimization had become his professional expertise. Harlan served as Chief Technology Officer, bringing 40 years of defense intelligence experience and a network of contacts that reached into every corner of the military-industrial complex. Ivy Latham ran digital forensics as lead analyst, applying her Air Force signals intelligence background to corporate security problems. Their newest hire was Marcus Webb, a former Navy cryptologist who specialized in penetration testing and vulnerability assessment. The work was more satisfying than anything Jack had done before. Instead of just building security systems, they were actively hunting the kind of predators who had targeted him. Corporate espionage, foreign intelligence operations, insider threats, all the dangers that most companies never saw coming until it was too late. Jack stood on the cabin's front porch, watching the sun set over the valley below. His phone buzzed with notifications, 3 new contract inquiries. 2 from Fortune 500 companies that had heard about their success rate. Lawrence Systems was growing faster than he'd anticipated, built on a reputation for exposing exactly the kind of betrayal that had nearly destroyed him. The latest case involved a defense contractor in Virginia whose employees kept leaving to join a competitor, taking classified research with them. Standard industrial espionage, but with national security implications. The kind of work that made Jack feel like he was protecting other people from what he'd experienced out of dog bark from inside the cabin. Reckon, a German Shepherd mix he'd adopted from the local shelter 6 months ago. The dog had been abused by previous owners, betrayed by people who were supposed to protect him. Trust didn't come easily to either of them. They understood each other perfectly. Jack called Reckon outside and threw a tennis ball across the yard. The dog bounded after it with pure joy, uncomplicated by memories of betrayal or thoughts of revenge. Animals had that advantage over humans. They could forgive and move forward without carrying the weight of past hurt. Jack wasn't sure he wanted that kind of forgiveness. The anger had been useful. It had motivated him through the investigation, sustained him through the legal proceedings, and ultimately driven him to build something better from the wreckage of his marriage. His phone rang. Harlan's number. "We got the Virginia contract," Harlan announced. "They want us to start next week. Full audit of their personnel, financial records, and digital security. Any special concerns? Their CEO thinks they have a mole in senior management. Someone with access to board meetings and strategic planning sessions. Could be another Blackwater operation. Jack felt the familiar surge of hunting instinct. I'll review their employee files tonight. No rush. You've been pushing yourself too hard lately. Take the evening off. I'm fine. You're always fine. That's what worries me. Harlan's voice carried the concern of a mentor who'd seen too many good people burn themselves out. Success doesn't mean working yourself to death. After hanging up, Jack walked to the fire pit beside the cabin. On the small table next to his chair sat a framed photograph, his wedding photo with Mira from 7 years ago. They looked happy in the picture, young and naive and completely unprepared for what was coming. For months after the trial, Jack had kept the photo as a reminder, a warning against future trust, future vulnerability. But lately, it felt more like carrying poison than carrying wisdom. Jack picked up the photograph and walked to the fire pit. He struck a match and held it to the corner of the frame. The photograph curled and blackened, 7 years of lies transforming into smoke and ash. The flames consumed their wedding day, their anniversary parties, their shared vacations and quiet dinners. Everything that had seemed real but wasn't. Everything that had been performance rather than partnership. Jack watched the last of the photograph turn to ash, then scattered the remains into the wind. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new contracts, new opportunities to protect other people from the kind of betrayal he'd survived. Tonight, he had 40 acres of silence and a dog who understood that loyalty was earned, not assumed that IT was enough. More than enough.